All right, we're live. We are live.
One of my favorite phrases, all the way live.
We're all the way live. Yes, we
All the way
are.
live. What's going on,
Mhm.
Cathey?
Hey, how's it going? Oh, Mark, we're here again. This is awesome. 2 weeks ago, we did our very first LinkedIn Live. Well, it was our second attempt, right? And we actually made it through to LinkedIn. And we decided that we were going to turn this into a series, which is super cool, calling it The Future of Speaking. We even took public out because, come on, anytime you're speaking, you're speaking. Doesn't matter, does it?
That's funny because I go back to when I wrote my book on the rules of engagement in public speaking, and throughout the whole book, I actually try to make this connection clear that we can't just get lost in the world of public speaking because every time you open up your mouth, you're communicating and speaking, right? So I love the future of speaking.
Future of speaking. Yeah, I love that. And, we're in the midst of it. We started an online community called Speaker Skills Academy. And so consistently, multiple times a week, we get together with our academy, with the people in our academy and the community, and we are drilling skills that are specific to the future of speaking as it's evolving, as it's changing, not kind of the old way where you had to like make a speech. We work on things like everyday speaking and storytelling and stuff. So I think it's really fitting that we started this. And Mark, today I'm pretty excited about the topic that we came up with.
Yeah, this is the our third time around with this, and everything's sort of just been under the future of public speaking. And that very first conversation was really around AI. But I love that we are now, just like with Speaker Skills Academy, breaking down everything into like nuances. And that's one of my favorite new words, right? The
Oh, it
nuance.
is.
Yeah, yeah. So just talking about what is your speaking style?
Hmm.
I think is an awesome nuance for us to talk about today.
Yeah, and we have a bunch of people already live with us. So hey everybody, please chime in where you're calling from, your name, whatever. Well, your name will come up, right? Um, we would love to have this conversation with you all about speaking style. It's super important, right, Mark?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
One of the things I think it takes a lot of people time to figure out is what is your speaking style? You know? And how do you be genuine and authentic to yourself? Here's a couple things I want to talk about today, Mark, but I
Okay, go
know
for it.
our audience is going to take us wherever, and we're going to go wherever. But I would love for people to explore what is your speaking style and how can you expand beyond it? Not in an inauthentic way, but how can we push our boundaries?
Well, it's funny that we ask this question because, and I love the first part of it before even expanding it. Like, how do you figure out? How do you categorize? How do you describe your speaking style? So Kathy, I'm going to throw that right at you, right? How do you describe the Kathy Armia's speaking style?
Ooh, you're like, I'm gonna tee it up to you first. Ooh. Okay, great question. I think it took me a long time to figure this out, Mark. Even as a professional speaker, I was getting paid, I was doing engagements, and I think the clients knew my speaking style before I did. I think the clients hired me because they had heard word of mouth, and I think that they already knew it. I would say that my speaking style is positive, uplifting, engaging, transparent, authentic, charismatic, which charisma has a really wide base to it. Um, yeah, those are some of the things I would say are my speaking style, which I don't think they all come naturally. I think some of them you have to work on. What about you, Mark?
So I love that list. And you've actually inspired me to expand upon it. But I'll start off with this. Um, I don't know if I ever described my speaking style other than just saying I was energetic, right? Like anytime I had to write like a speaker bio, I was like energetic, energized, right? Because I love to bring the energy. I would say that my speaking style is also the one of storyteller. I
Mm,
seep in storytelling as much as I can because I just love it. I think my speaking style, I'm gonna use the word positive. I'm gonna use the word optimistic because I think that's what I'm always trying to do. Create an optimistic perspective. Some people say motivational. I'm liking
mm,
inspirational these days. And the other
mm.
word for me is animated. And here's the
Oh.
story behind it. Gabby said, oh, I was waiting
Oh,
for that one.
yes, 100%.
So here's my brief story about that. I remember being in Malaysia, competing for the World Championship of Public Speaking. And it's now time to go to the finals. And you know the whole Malaysia story, right? I mean, how much work we went in to go for that final speech. And when I delivered that final speech, and then I came back home to the United States, a
Mm,
good friend of ours, Penelope Baum, said, she goes, here's the thing about that final speech you delivered. It wasn't quite your style. I go, what are you talking about? She goes, you're a very animated speaker. And she goes, that speech did not leverage your animation.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And she was the one who really brought it out to me at that point. That's a part of my speaking style. Yeah. Karen giving a shout out to Penelope.
yeah.
Penelope!
Look, Karen also said something about you that I think is really true. Thanks for chiming in, Karen. Mark's specialty is making you feel like you're the only person in the world when he's talking to you. Laser focus on you and genuine. Oh, this Karen,
I
so well
appreciate
said.
that. I got so much love for you, Special K.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I wonder too, to anybody watching, even if you're watching now live or later, like chime in. What is your, what do you think your speaking style is? And what are the things that you want to double down on? If you were to ask five people that you know, I always love this, Mark, right? Ask somebody that's in your family, so they're super close to you, ask somebody that's outside of your family, maybe, but still close, maybe like a friend or an acquaintance or something, and then ask people that you maybe work with. And what would they say is your some of your attributes, your character attributes? And when you start to hear some of the similar things, Mark, I think that's when you go, oh, those are my genuine things that come across. So which ones do I want to elevate? And are there any on the list that I really would love to include? You know, I think being positive sometimes for some people can take some work, you know? Like if you're like,
Mm-hmm.
when I speak, I want to be more positive. I don't want to take the negative angle all the time. I want to take the positive angle. There's some things that you can absolutely make part of your speaking style that are genuine and authentic.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that and say that the magic in asking people around you about your characteristics, and I would even add people that have hired you or have worked with you to ask them
Mm,
about it because their answer is not just what they notice, their answer is why they want to work with you.
yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
that becomes a part that, and I remember somebody giving me that advice for coaching. And I was like, oh, what do you like about what I bring to the coaching? And they pointed out a number of different things. And I was like, ooh, that's some of the language that I'm going to
Yeah.
use moving
Mm,
forward so that when other people want to work with me, now they have an idea about what separates me or what distinguishes me. What's my speaking style? What's my coaching style? So I think that's a powerful thing that you just said that we should all be doing. Ask people around you, people closest to you, and people who work with you. What's your style?
Yeah, yeah. And I would love for anybody listening right now, like drop it in there. What are some of the things that people have said about you? I also think, Mark, you know, I love that because you can, there's already a positivity to that, right? People have hired you for a reason. These are the attributes that people would say are you. But what about bringing in a different style that might not be your style right now, or expanding, right? Because we work on this a lot in Speaker Skills Academy. Anything that you want, anything that you want to get better at in life, I don't care what it is, you can get better if you drill, practice, 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 you know?
Mhm.
So,
Well, I think a great example of that is George ran a coaching session for us on mixing your media.
yeah.
And I love that. I mean, for anybody who feels super comfortable and confident working on Zoom, I mean, George opened up some things that I never knew Zoom could do.
Yep.
And I'll just drop this word, Prezi, right? Um,
Yeah.
he had us playing around with multimedia in so many different ways. But the thing that he said that really resonated with me is it's not just about using images on a slide deck or, on this virtual platform, but it's also about doing it in such a way that's smooth. Ah!
I just grabbed the first one that was there,
I
right?
love it. I love it. I love it. Right. He said, do it in a way that's smooth and like, don't just leave it up there so that people are looking at this and not looking at you. And I think that's the future, right? It's not just using images or using these other styles, but it's also how do you fluently and naturally incorporate some of these other styles? And you hit upon it. You got to practice it. You can't just be introduced to it. You now have to start practicing with it. And shall we say, because I'm loving you with all of these images. Can we also just say the first couple of times that you drill it and practice with it and use it, it's probably not going to be smooth.
Yeah,
And that's okay. I
right.
think that we have to always remember that nothing, especially if it's not your style, nothing's going to come out perfectly the first time around. Keep practicing with it until it gets smooth. So I'm gonna see if I can pull out a couple of images before we're done.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I love it. These are some of the things that George had us doing. I was a little distracted here for a second because I got on. I was like, oh yeah, I remember we did this. It was awesome. Um, remember early on when we first started Speaker Skills Academy, and I remember very clearly we had this one session called Creating Charisma. Remember that one?
Yes.
And I remember we talked about it within the community, and we were like, can you create it? And that was one of my favorite sessions that we had ever done early on. Because I remember, Mark, when we were talking about what charisma was, we all started like chiming in. Like, what are some of the things that make you say somebody has charisma? And we were like, those things we can do. But when you talk about it as just a general, like, do I have charisma? Yes or no? Well, first let's define it. You know, what
Mhm.
are some of the things that you think when you think of charisma, Mark?
You know, I think before we did that drill, if you would have asked me, what is charisma? Charisma is that it factor that you just kind of step into the room and just the way that you stand and the volume of your voice and the emphasis that you put on words, it just screams charisma and everybody just, who's that person stepping into the room, right? Oh my goodness. It's like in a movie, everything stops, right?
Yeah.
But there's just something, whether it's physically attractive or just spiritually attractive, something that is just magnetic about you. I think
Yeah.
that's what I think of. That's what I originally thought of as charisma.
Yeah, it's energy, right? There's that it's kind of that energy that you're talking about. And I wonder what other ways can we add energy, right? And it
Mm.
doesn't always have to be the big grandiose, energy, right? And I think that's what people think. So adding charisma could be making people feel, let's say for instance, you add a charismatic value of when you're speaking, where they feel a lot of like love and warmth. There's like an energy there, and that can be very charismatic. That even if it's like a low level, but yet it sounds very spiritual or whatever, but high vibration kind of level kind of thing, it doesn't always have to be the big energy. There's still good energy that isn't big always. And anyway, that was kind of a fun thing that we explored that one time, which is just talking about a little bit more about that. What could that entail? And I think it's good energy.
Well, Karen wrote in the chat, natural ability to attract people. I want to really zero in on the natural, because everybody by nature has got charisma. And so I think moving forward, the question might transition from what does it mean to have charisma to what is your charisma?
Oh, I like that. Mark, I like that
Hmm?
so much. Yeah. Like, what is your charisma? Because everybody has it. So, what is it?
Right, right. And I think about, I go back to my teaching days, right? And there I am standing in a class with 34 students, and every student has their personality, right? And
Mhm.
it's funny, we're comfortable saying everybody's got their personality, but we don't necessarily get comfortable saying everybody's got their charisma. But to me, it's almost one and the same, because there's something about you naturally that makes you stand out. That's your charisma,
Yeah.
that's your personality, that's your persona, whatever you want to call it. And so I'm thinking of students I've had in my class who probably thought they were boring, there was nothing special about them.
Mm,
And, we just need to listen to people, or go back to your question earlier. Ask people, what is it that makes you stand out? Kathy, you've got friends, you've got family, you got people who like you, right? So they can tell you, oh, Kathy, I love it when you do that. Or, that's kind of interesting when you do that. That's that
yeah.
natural ability that Karen is talking about. And I'm gonna put, I talked about the word nuance earlier. My other favorite word over the last 12 months has become leverage.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Maybe I'm not big energy, but there's just something like I could talk numbers, right? I can talk research, and that might sound kind of lame for other people, but that's who you are. That's your charisma. Make those numbers work for you when you talk about them.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad that Karen's here actually, because one of the things that Karen has as her natural leverage, and I tell her this all the time, right? You've heard me even tell her this, is Karen has this great ability to take something really complex and make it easy. I told her in her another lifetime she would be a great professor. Like, because I even think she's up at this high, like really complex ideas. And so I
Mm.
think at the college level she would have done really well, just to take things. And then there's this natural charisma with an energy and leverage with when she explains it, you're like, I get it. Oh, I get that. That is a gift. And I think people overlook that. They think there's like things that they see people do well. They'll see a comedian and they go, oh, they can make people laugh. That's charisma, or that's a great speaking style. That's one of thousands, right? There's
Yeah.
so many things that could make us. Mark, I've met people who are very quiet and slow and intentional in the way that they speak. And that is a great energy. It feels calming, it feels mindful, it feels secure, it feels confident, it feels good. That's a speaking style, one of many.
Listen, everybody doesn't have to be the class clown, and everybody doesn't have to be, prom king or queen, right? Most popular kid in school. I love that you just said that, right? I could just have a calm, laid back kind of style. And that's my charisma, and I
Yeah.
think that when I heard you say it, what came to mind for me and what I think we all need to think about is there are different types of audiences, and that's why there are different types of speakers.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think as an audience member, I look at somebody like Kathy and I'm like, she's got charisma. And I think it's because there's something about your style that I find attractive, right?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
there
Yep.
might be somebody in the audience who's like, I don't know about that guy, Mark. And that's okay. That's okay.
Right.
I get excited because Eric Thomas. I love talking about Eric Thomas a lot, right?
Ooh, ET, let's
Right.
go.
And I remember listening to him say once when he was getting ready to, he was getting his corporate gigs and everything like that. And, he wears his sweatshirt and his cap and everything. And he's like, people were telling him, oh no, you're gonna have to change up that style because it's not gonna work there, right? And people like, man, you're kind of loud and everything like that. And he came to this conclusion. If I'm too loud or if I'm too street or if I'm too whatever, then you're just not my audience. That doesn't mean I don't
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
charisma. It just
Yeah.
means you're not my audience. And
I
that's
love that.
okay.
I love that. Mark, I love that. And I love, I hope anybody watching or, when we're talking about speaking style, I do, because Karen wrote another thing that I really like. Thanks for engaging so much, Karen. It's really good. She wrote the common characteristic in all charismatic people is a certain level of self-love or self-esteem. And I think that's what you're talking about. Eric Thomas is like, hey, this is me. Like, and I'm genuinely, authentically going to be me. And I think that there's a balance between being like, yeah, this is who I am, but also morphing and shaping yourself out of your own boundaries. And so I think there's a lot in there. But one of the things that I think that people can do that turn people off is like, let's say, for instance, somebody really likes Eric Thomas. They're like, oh,
Mhm.
I love that. He comes in how he is and he wears what he wants. And if you try to like match his volume, people are going to be like, oh, you're so loud. Because it doesn't, I would be screaming if I tried to be Eric Thomas, right? I would have to like actually yell. My actual voice I cannot match the bass he has in his voice, right? So yeah, I think that people are attracted to you and your speaking style too when they know it's genuine and authentic, even if they don't like it, even if they're not your audience. You can look at him and go, okay, he's authentic. Yeah.
You know whoever else that reminded me of? Have you ever heard David Goggins speak?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. David Goggins, yes.
David Goggins got a potty mouth,
Yeah, he definitely, yes, he does.
but that's his
Yeah,
charisma. And that
yeah.
works. And some people might be, but that's his charisma. And he should never change. And I love that you said that because I think quite often we are asked, who are some speakers or communicators that you admire? Right. And I've asked people that, right? But when I
Hmm.
ask people that, it's not for the purpose of, okay, let's see how we can get you to be the next Kathy Armias, right? That's not the point. The point is, so what is it that you like about them, right? Because that's something that really stands out to you. And maybe there's
Yeah.
an element of that that you can bring into your style, but don't go
Yes.
out there and try to be, listen, I don't think I'm funny at all. Well, I know, hush your mouth. But
Definitely.
I'm no Kevin Hart, and I wouldn't try to come out and be Kevin Hart, right?
Right,
That wouldn't
right.
work.
No, but you bring up a good point. Hey, if you're somebody out there that's watching and you're like, well, first thing that you should know is we all have a style. So just be more in control of it, right? It's kind of like a personal brand. I get to choose if I wake up in the morning how I dress and maybe if I put makeup on and style. Like I get to choose part of my personal style. And some of it just comes naturally from the way I show up in the world, and some of it I can control. And I think that's what we're saying here is there's a piece of it that comes from naturally who you are, and there's another piece that you can elevate. And Mark, you are super funny, right? but you have honed your ability to tell stories in a certain way that come across as funny. You never said, "Oh, I'm going to try to like I'm going to try to be Kevin Hart or, be the comedian or whatever." Oh, Marcus is in the house. What's up, Marcus? Yes. Oh my gosh. I actually, funny enough, Marcus and I had a conversation last year during the TEDx Portland thing about Kendrick Lamar, K Dot, right? And we were just talking, yeah, we talked about just how expansive his style is, Ooh, goes beyond music. It's,
I got to
that
give
guy.
Marcus, well, one, I'm gonna jump on that, and I got to tell you, I got to give Marcus a huge shout out because he's been dropping some, check this word out, some idea science
Yep,
on
yep.
LinkedIn, right? And he shared something about Kendrick Lamar recently about how Kendrick Lamar, for his Pimp a Butterfly album, recorded 80 songs in order to
Oh,
choose the 16, right? And he
yes.
dropped this whole science that
Yes.
we think our first couple of ideas are the best, but those are the obvious ones and those aren't the best. I love that he dropped that
Oh.
science. And I got to tell you, Marcus, I have paid that forward since I heard it, man. And
Mm.
and that's what I'm talking about, style, right? Marcus can go out there and drop some, Marcus and Josh, right, can come out there and drop some idea science, and that's what they're awesome at, right? Everybody's got their style.
But that's the piece. You're doing 80 to get to 16. That's the piece you can control, right? I love that too. I'm working with a guy right now that is giving a TED Talk in London, and his whole idea is on the more you try to control things, the less control that you have. And I think sometimes what you do is if you're working with a client or something, you think, oh, this is going to be the best thing for them. And so you hone in on that thing, but you haven't explored, and in his talk, he's like, how successful is that? It's literally 50-50. And that's terrible. Those aren't good odds. Those are terrible odds, actually. And that means that, like, if you're trying to put together an album and you're like, oh, I think this will sell, this will be great, and you haven't really explored it, it's a 50-50. Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
And Marcus is talking about the halftime show.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, you know what? Let's build on that too, right? Because since we're talking about K Dot, right? I know there's gonna be my children are gonna be like, "Did you really just call him K Dot?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just called him K Dot, right? Get over it." Let's go to that for a moment. There's a halftime show, and he did his halftime show differently than others have done it, right? Because he's not just a performer, but he's also deep in his message,
Mhm.
right? That's a part of his style. So you take somebody, I feel like I almost don't want to pick on anybody, but
Yeah, I know. I get where you're going. I get where you're going.
right? But I'll just say, because I think it was Usher who was the last year. Usher's straight up performance can drop a performance like no other, can dance like super amazing. Like that was his style. He's not going to come in and try to get you to start thinking on some deep political level or anything like that. And that's okay.
Right.
Kendrick did something completely different.
He
And even
did.
the way he set up the stage, right?
Yeah.
Um, awesome.
Part
Awesome.
of style, yeah. And I get that. What kind of reverberated a lot after the halftime shows. I think a lot of people watched it and did not get it at first. And then I think a lot more people, when they really understood how deep it was, that they were like, oh, okay, I love that now. Mad respect. Like, I get it now. There's so much more, there was so much more than maybe what you saw in that instant if you didn't quite understand what he had done. But look at all the intention that went into that. And that is a style. I love it. It's a style.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think as we always use this phrase, right, the future of speaking, the future of speaking. It's not just what you're saying, right? And we know Maya Angelou always said, right? But it's not just what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. And that how is now dictated and driven by your style. So the more you can start to identify and the many different components, right, of your style, the more you can start to bring that in. And now I'm not just saying it this way because inflection is a good thing to do, right? Or I'm not just moving my arms around because somebody told me that body language, people remember, right? We're doing it with a particular intention because that's our style. That's our best way of getting it across. But I got to ask you another thing, Kathy. Style is not even just the way you speak. It's even how you dress and show up, right? And my sister Kathy, the first time I ever met her, she was doing a workshop at a conference. And I don't remember exactly the attire, but you were like chilled out, right? It wasn't like this suit and this, right? You
Yep.
were just super chilled out and laid back. Kathy, why? Why is that your style? And how did you discover that?
Well, I'm West Coast, so come on, let's go West Coast. No, no, no. In all seriousness, though, growing up in Los Angeles, there is a certain vibe that I kind of grew up like being. When I speak, I'll wear like nice jeans or nice pants, but then I pop my shoes, as you know. I have my speaker sneakers behind me, right? Let me get out of the way. They're behind me. So I will pop my feet, and that's my style. Dare I say I'm a sneakerhead because there's some real sneakerheads out there, but I'm a wannabe sneakerhead, and and I love me, I have over 100 sneakers in my garage. Like there's a yeah, Karen said surfer vibe. I don't show up with the surfer vibe, but there's definitely yeah, exactly, hang loose. It's got, um but I found that I was most comfortable when I started speaking when I showed up that way. And if I was in like a suit or something, I would be all weird and not me, and then I got no style. And I think that I show up in places, Mark, where everybody's wearing a suit and I'm not. And
Mm.
I'm speaking and they hire me for that and they already know that's how I'm going to show up. It has become part of my what we talk about speaker swag.
What makes you comfortable? I think that is such a powerful thing to ponder because, and you know me, I've definitely showed up in my suits and my ties and my shoes.
Yes, you
And
have.
yes, you have. Yes, I have. And my wife Lauren and my sister Kathy here have often said, like, you don't need to go out there like that. And it makes such great sense because that's not how you normally show up in your everyday. And not that there's anything wrong with suits. Some people,
Yeah,
you and I talked about this the other day. Some people can make a suit mm, look
yeah,
damn good.
yeah, yeah. And that's their style.
Yeah. And some people look great in suits, but that's not their style. Right.
Yeah.
And I love thinking about how would you normally dress? I gotta give you a nod. You talk about sneakerhead. I don't have them on right now, but Kathy, thank you for my new speaker sneakers. Thank you for my new
Ooh.
sneakers. I would love for everybody to think, because a lot of shoe companies, to my knowledge, are doing this now, right? A lot of apparel companies are doing this now, where you can sort of design your own thing. What would your unique sneakers look like if they were the embodiment, the personification of your style, your charisma, your brand? Check this word out: your comfort.
Yeah, right? Like I love it. Look, I'm gonna show you guys a pair of my all right, I'm just gonna grab two, right?
Okay.
So I got these, right? These are my TEDx Portland, right? It says spread ideas. The client in London where I just gave my gig, I did for the first time ever, Mark, I did something because they're always like saying, "Oh, the speaker's behind you. Let me see them all." And so I would move and I would show it to him. And then I said, "I have an idea. I'm going to send you a picture when we get off the call. You guys choose whatever shoes you want me to wear in London. I will show up and I'll wear them." They chose these. And so my opening story for my storytelling workshop when I went there was about how you all got to choose my shoes and I'm wearing them, right? Of course, I like me some Jordans too. I like some flashy. So there, I have like different styles with the shoes. But one of the things that I think is really cool about thinking about that, you know, our friend Justin, who has been on our It's About to
Mhm.
Go Down show, you never find Justin without a cute ass bow tie. Like that's just part of who he is. And he looks so damn cute with it, right? So I love that we're even talking about the expressiveness of your style, relaying through comfort. And if you don't feel comfortable in whatever you're wearing or however you show up, and Mark, you look great in a suit. I think you just show up way more comfortable. Like this year when you were in Anaheim with what you were wearing, I was like, oh, you look really good. It's unique, it's to you, but I just felt like you were more comfortable.
I was. First of all, with the sneakers, um, I think I still wore a tie, and I mean, in the future, I might even start stripping off the tie. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But it was. I
Tie gone.
felt right, right. I felt so much more relaxed, right? And that becomes yet another word. What makes you feel relaxed in the in what you're wearing? What makes you feel relaxed in the way that you speak? What makes you feel relaxed in terms of like the phrasing and the terminology and the wording that you use. Because when you are in that, we think about speaking as this frightening thing, this thing that makes us feel also uncomfortable. So why aren't we going up there in a way that makes you feel comfortable and relaxed?
Yeah, yeah. I love all this. I love this. Okay, so for anybody watching, Mark, you know, next week we have a really great schedule in Speaker Skills Academy. Oh my goodness. I know Gina, one of our coaches, Gina Riley is going to be doing one on speaking as a podcast guest. Like, oh my gosh, what a great session. Even if you're not on podcast, to like formulate your thoughts and your stories, short, concise, quick, powerful, idea filled. That's awesome. Again, that can be part of your speaking style, right? I know Leffert's doing one next week called What's the Point? And so I know he's going to hone in on when you're talking, how do you get to the point? Do we all know somebody that doesn't ever get to the point? We all know that person, right? You're like looking at them like, what? I don't
What's the
know the
point?
point to any, yeah, I don't know the point to any of this, right? Um, So we have a lot of really good stuff next week, and I think we should play a game for the audience, you know, and make people think, like show people what we do in Speaker Skills Academy. Do a drill. And I
Mm,
have an idea for a drill we can kind of do in the room. And even if
go
people are
for it.
watching the broadcast later, we'll
Hmm.
kind of play it. And if anybody wants to play along, I know there's a little bit of a lag, so we'll try our best to kind of mess
Hmm.
around with the audience. But let's play the what's the idea game. So thinking about being on a podcast and thinking about what's the point. We play this game sometimes in our community where we say, hey, like, Mark, I'm going to ask you to ask me any question. And my job will be to not just answer the question technically, because that's boring, but to create an idea out of it. So why don't we do it to each other? So you ask me a question first and I'll demo it and
All
then I'll
right.
do the same for you.
All right. I'm gonna throw out a question that I asked this. I'm actually coaching a DJ right now.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
Um, so I'm gonna ask you the same question.
Okay.
Kathy, before you speak, what is your go-to song on your playlist?
Mm, mm. I love that. So if I was on a podcast, Mark, and you asked me that, instead of just answering the question, I would eventually get to it, right? I would say, and this is what helps us, you know, come across as more of a thought leader or that we're thinking about the we and not just the me, because I can just keep answering questions to me. I would say something like, I think I would use this idea angle. I would say something like, I think it's really important that you get yourself in the right mind frame. I think it's the most important thing you can do if you're going to speak, especially not even just for yourself, but more so for your audiences. So, depending on what kind of mood I need to be in, I have a couple of go-to songs. If I need to bring my mood down and contemplative, I'll listen to a song I'll listen to Enya. I'll listen to something that's very chill and contemplative, and I really love it. I've been listening to it a lot more lately, you know. If I want something hype, 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 I'm going to be listening to like It's All the Way Up. Right? I'm gonna be in there, if it feels like if I'm gonna go play a ball game, I might be listening to Eye of the Tiger or Champion, with Carrie Underwood and Luda. So I first will do I'll answer with an idea, and the idea angle could be anything, right? Can you think of another idea angle for that same question
Oh
that's
yeah,
different from what I said?
I think again, I would get to the answer eventually, but the idea that I would go with is it's really important to have contained energy
Oh,
before you speak.
oh, see, I love that.
You know,
Contain it.
it right? Contained
Yeah.
energy. It follows the theory of the calm before the storm, right?
Oh,
So I love before because I think once you kind of calm yourself down, but you got that energy ready to unleash, right? But you're holding it in for a little bit so
containing
that when you're
it.
ready,
It comes out.
woo, it's like the horse coming out of the gates, right?
Oh,
But you
that's a
gotta
good,
see the
yeah.
gates first. You gotta see the gates first. So it's all that constrained
Mm.
energy. And that's why it's not so much the track that I'm listening to. And I got a lot of tracks. You talked about Luda. I'll talk about Ice Cube. I'll talk about Kendrick. I'll talk about Drake. I'll talk about Rose and Kendrick Lamar, right? But whatever it is, when I'm listening to it, Kathy, I want to burst out. I want to burst out and I want to start moving around. And I almost imagine that like I'm in a straitjacket, right? And I
It's
can't. I can't.
contained.
Yeah, it's like it's contained. It wants to come out, but I'm building it up. And then when I go out there, I come off calm, but
It comes out. Oh, I
yeah.
love that. But do you see how like that you created an idea that we could relate to?
Mhm.
I was doing a I did a I'm gonna ask you your question next, but I want to say something that I think is really important. Yesterday, I was doing a storytelling workshop for Big Brothers, Big Sisters. There's two littles that have went through the program, and they're gonna talk at a big gala, right? And they're it's like they're nervous, right? Like, I got to talk about this experience. And one of the things that we were saying last night to them is like there's the emotional piece and there's a logical piece. The logical piece of a story could be like, you're a father and I'm the daughter, let's say, right? That's the logic. That's just the label. That's the whatever. The emotional piece is that we have a disagreement because you won't let me spend the night at my friend's house, or you keep coming into my room and I feel like you're invading my privacy, or you won't let me stay out as long as my friends stay out, right? There's the kind of the conflict, or it doesn't always have to be conflict. It could also be like we have this great relationship and we spend every Sunday hanging out together. Like, this doesn't have to be bad, but there's something, the emotional piece is not the same. And when you talk about, and that's a relatability piece. And so when we find the idea, you're looking for that very thing. You're looking you're looking to find the piece that the audience goes, "Oh, it's not just me going, "Oh, I totally care about what Mark's favorite song is." But it starts to make me think about why in that situation, why my favorite song would hype me up or something, right? So,
Love that. Love
all
that.
right, let me ask you a question. Let me think of one. I'm going to try to make it as boring as possible because I'm just I just want
Thanks.
to show, well, no, I mean, it just shows that you can make an idea out of anything.
Mm.
Um, do you think that there should be more bike lanes in cities? I
Ooh,
just picked that out of nowhere. I'm like,
that's that's good. That's good. And while I could start off by saying, yes, there should be more bike lanes, or no, there shouldn't be any more bike lanes, I think the idea that I would talk about is how important it is to make space for the things you take pleasure in.
oh,
And as I were to go on with that, I mean, at the end of the day, more bike lanes is more space for people to enjoy.
mm,
But
mm.
it's also understanding that the people who sometimes like, there's way too many damn bikes on this street, that's because they also want more space for the things
Mm,
that they enjoy. And so it's not even really about bike lanes, but it
it's
is
about,
about having more space
oh,
for the
see?
things we enjoy doing. Oh, taking it.
Oh, see, but see how much if so, Gina, you're gonna like just crush it when Gina does her thing, right? You're gonna be like, I'm ready, Gina, let's go. I know how to be a podcast guest. It's just, but it's showing up and creating something more than just the technical answer. It's finding the idea. It's a part of your style. The reason we like to listen to some people, the reason we love Kevin Hart is because he can find the funny in anything, right? And he's like blowing everything up. That's a style. We did know the class clown. Why did we always laugh? Because they always made light and funny out of, any boring whatever situation. So we can always do the same with that drill, like find the idea. It's just fun to play.
It's great to play. And what you just reminded me of something else that actually kind of goes back to something Karen wrote earlier. And by the way, I got to give Karen credit. First of all, she gave you a nod. She said, yes, that was a boring question.
Like, that's boring, all right. That is really boring.
I love that. I love that she also gave a nod to Christina Aguilera and Genie in the
In
Bottle.
bottle.
I
Yeah.
like that. But there was a quote earlier about, and I forget the exact wording about five fingers on a hand.
Yeah.
When I think about charisma, I think that the trap we get into is we think it's just one thing.
Yeah.
And like
Yep.
that's how you have to be all the time. And I will always argue that we are multifaceted. And so there's a lot of people who talk about code switching, code switching, code switching, and that's bad. Be yourself. Don't go out there and code switch. I don't think code switching is this authentic versus inauthentic.
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
code switching is understanding this part of your personality needs to
Yeah.
take the driver's seat, and that part of your personality needs to sit in the back, right? So when you mentioned Kevin Hart, yes, he can find humor in everything. But without knowing him, I'm sure there are moments in his life and people in his life when they're like, Kev, listen, listen.
Don't
Yeah,
don't
I,
show
I
up
don't
like
need to
that.
be funny right now, right? And
Yeah.
he can
Yeah.
code switch and he's not being fake. He's just putting that part of his charisma in the front seat.
Yeah, and I wonder if the term code switching already implies that you have to do it. So maybe there's a piece of that, right? But I think what you're talking about is genuine and authentic communication and speaking, and because there's different, you're not going to talk to a 6-year-old child the same way that you would talk to your friends, right? When you're out with your buddies, Mark, the way y'all are talking, you don't bring that mouth back to you don't bring that. Karen says she doesn't fit into one category. No, you don't. And I don't think anybody does, which is I love that, Mark, about what you're saying. And I love your background in education and being a teacher in the past and being a principal. And I'm sure even within the educational system of being there's a difference between being a teacher and being a principal, right? You
Absolutely.
talk different. There's a different way, you know.
Different
I know
responsibilities.
I've been
Yeah.
to court and had a speeding ticket, and I told the judge why it was okay for me to be speeding, but he was pretty much like, "Hey, I'm gonna side with the police officer because that's what I do." And I'm like, okay, I get it." Anyway, but there's spaces where, and I love that. There's that you can just like use a different part of you. So you have many styles, you have many different ways that you can show up. And so how can we explore that a little bit more, Mark?
Well, I think one of the ways that we can explore it is thinking about something you want to say, right? And then thinking about whether it be different people. Like I would say, think about maybe 5 or 6 different people in your life, right? Maybe in your personal life, maybe in your work life, maybe somebody is a stranger, maybe somebody you look up to, maybe somebody who looks up to you, and think about what is this one thing that you want to say to each of them, right? And if you pick a diverse enough group, the way that you speak to each person is going to be different, right?
Yep.
Like you said, in my group of friends that I know back from high school, the story that I tell is going to be a whole lot different. It's going to be the same story, but I'm going to tell it a
Not the
slightly
same
different way,
version.
right?
Yeah.
Or listen, to get somber for a moment, if you lost someone,
Mm,
right? There's certain people in your life that, you might let it out and you might cry about it. There might be somebody you speak about and it's like they're just angry about it, and you got to deal with that. And then some people are like, this is a homegoing and we're just gonna laugh and tell stories. And it's like sometimes it's not even the different audience. Sometimes it's switching to different occasion on which you're going to share something. Listen, I
yeah.
remember 9/11, right?
Mm,
And I remember teaching on the day of 9/11. And I remember just a few moments before hearing what I simply thought was a car crash. I was being my old Mr. Williams, telling a story, getting in everything
mm,
self. But then something happened and somebody came to the door and let me know what was happening. And I had to switch it up, right? And I'm going to continue to use this metaphor. I had to take the other part of my charisma that was sitting in the back seat, who doesn't always show up in the front of the classroom, and put him in the front seat and let him drive,
mm,
right?
mm,
So
mhm,
Karen's right. I don't fit into one category. I got about 5 people sitting in on this road trip called life, and everybody's got to
mm.
take a part of the driver's wheel. And sometimes, to your point earlier, when you're up in front of a room or you're speaking, don't be afraid to take the co-pilot, the backseat driver, and
The backseat
incorporate
driver.
all of them into how you speak.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I hope hopefully people watching and the community that we work with at Speaker Skills, they really start to understand that you have a style. So you know, keep keep investing into that. Keep trying to figure out what that is. You can always grow your strengths. You can always expand your talents. When I first started playing pickleball, Mark, there were so many. I didn't have a tennis background. There were so many
Mhm.
things that were awkward to me playing a paddle sport that I had to really work on. Now I have a certain style when I play.
Mhm.
And I think we need to start thinking about our speaking that way, especially because the future of speaking is going to require us to use our voices more. It's going to require us to use our original ideas more and share them more. That is what will separate you from other people, or technology like AI that can whip up a proposal in 5 minutes that's 100 times better than what I could have put together, you know? But that's not true because there's things in there that it would be me. There's things that would, that are part of my style. So yeah.
I will add to that because I feel like this has become a a great push for me. I definitely will admit to being a very visual and animated person, right? That's a part of my charisma. That's a part of my speaking style. I have not always been one for PowerPoint and slide deck,
Mm,
right? I always say Microsoft is going to sue me one day because sometimes I use the phrase PowerPointless, but that's no disrespect. That's no PowerPoint is an awesome tool. I just call it PowerPointless because that's really pointing out my deficiency in the area, right? My
yeah.
learning curve. But to use that word leverage earlier, how do I leverage my animated style to make my slide decks more animated
Oh,
for my
yeah.
audience, right?
Yes.
How do you
Ah.
leverage your style to do things that you're not always comfortable doing?
Mark, I'm glad you brought that up too, because you in the past have relied a lot more in your professional speaking, not your not your one-on-one speaking. You are a walking slide deck, let me tell you. Your hands and the way that you'll talk and you'll look the other direction and we feel like it's so good. But I love that you have personally made it kind of a mission, even in your own speaking, to like, hey, use slide decks more, like use something that can kind of emphasize a little bit more of what you're saying. And I love thinking about what is your style. Like people always tell me I have like I go wacky with my slide decks. I will have like the animated GIFs that are like
You are the queen.
and people love it. People love it, love it, love it. And it's kind of an extension of the style that I have. But again, everybody has a style. What is it? And how can you expand it? And I know we're going to close down in a second here, but Mark, I would say we have some really cool sessions coming up at Speaker Skills Academy. And so anybody out there that is listening to us talk about the future of speaking, if you want to see it in action, come visit us, like reach out to us and we'll invite you to Speaker Skills or just go to speakerskillsacademy.com. You can check out what we're doing. But
Yeah, yeah. Come visit us together. I got to give a nod because you talked about Gina and the podcast. She's also got another one, Speaking with Your North Star. And I love how
ooh,
she's going to have us tie that in with your own personal values. If there's not
yes.
something that
Oh,
reeks style, woo.
yeah,
So
I know.
yeah, take us up on the offer. Come visit us. We love when people come visit because we could tell you what it is, but until you show up to the playground and play with us, you won't know how much fun it can be.
Oh, so true, so true. So, anybody watching, thanks for joining us today. And we're going to do this every couple of weeks. We're going to have, if you have any suggestions for us on what you would love us to chat about that pertains to the future of speaking, we'll chat about it. And Mark, thanks for engaging today, and Karen and everyone who's on. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time
In the future.
in the future. Exactly.